Hello and welcome. This is Amhara Media Corporation and you are watching our Wednesday update live from Bahar Dar, Ethiopia, and I am Fikradi Zodu. Stay with us. Permanent representatives of Ethiopia to the United Nations Ambassador Taye Asqeselase urged that members of international community, state and non-state actors to refrain from providing moral and material support to the terrorist TPLF. Let's get more from Burhan Organe.
Addressing the meeting of the United Nations Security Council on Monday, Ambassador Taye Asqeselase said the terrorist is emboldened to unseat popularly elected federal government and destabilize the nation.
Our plea for members of the international community, state and non-state actors to refrain from providing moral and material support went unheeded. TPLF is emboldened and numbed itself to an extent. It stopped counting the lives of Ethiopians from Tigray. It sacrificed on its hopeless journey. Reiterate our plea for the support of this group that have been providing it with communication equipment, satellite information, weapons, and even fighters to desist from this. It is not only illegal, but also an immoral act.
He said Ethiopia has time and again expressed its readiness for national political dialogue, reaffirming that Ethiopia has accepted High Representative of the African Union for the Horn of Africa and assists his role.
We accepted the High Representative of the African Union to the Horn of Africa and assist his role. We believe the regional solution is best placed to support us get out of this problem.
On the other hand, Ambassador Taye added, diversity is not Ethiopia's problem.
Our challenge is not, as some reluctantly posit, a failure to manage diversity. Diversity is Ethiopia's asset. Our problem is a criminal group that refused to accept equality.
As to the ambassador, unfortunately, this group garners support from many sources.
Some media outlets in the West, some staff members and leaders of international organizations openly support the group. For your surprise, we sometimes learn the motives and the next steps of the group from statements and speeches of high-placed officials of these entities.
The ambassador added, as you may recall, this council made to convene over a false report alleging heinous crime, including the use of hunger as weapon of war. Thankfully, this comes out and these malicious accusations are dispelled by joint investigation of the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission and the UN Office of the Higher Commission for Human Rights. Moreover, Taye noted, as a result of continued and now widespread criminal belligerence of TPLF, the people of Tigray that needed urgent humanitarian assistance are not having any aid delivered.
The people in Afar and Amhara regions are rendered vulnerable. Cities and towns are shelled. Residents are killed in their doorsteps and robbed their earnings from their toil. True to its unscrupulous and cruel nature, TPLF is causing terror and mayhem.
There is government representing all Ethiopian people and representing the Ethiopian state, and there is group advancing its criminal cause through atrocities.
Any attempt, including the media campaign we have been witnessing in the past few days, to launder the TPLF and diminish the horror it committed against the Ethiopian people will only be counterproductive. What exalts my country as a nation is to overcome its own challenges. What may raise us as a country is the commitment of all Ethiopians to bring peace and stability. What is needed is well-meant insight and forethought and support. Statements of marginalization, sanctions, punitive measures will not help, or rather counterproductive.
Ethio-American journalist Helman Laaregawi said that reporters of some Western media about the current situation in Ethiopia are inaccurate and one-sided. Ababa Burhane will give us the detail.
In an exclusive interview with Ethiopian news agency, The journalist said, broadly speaking, the reports have been inaccurate and there are lots of glaring gaps with particular reports within each media organization. In terms of humanitarian assistance in Tigray, they say there was a de facto blockade and that was not true as humanitarian aid was going into the region.
For example, a lot of the reports by CNN's Nima El-Bagir have been very one-sided, that have been really speaking the narrative of what the rebels want people to believe in terms of genocide and ethnic cleansing. There have been no reports on CNN about TPLF militias going into the Amhara and Afar regions where thousands have died. So that's a really very huge thing to ignore if you're trying to be balanced.
The Tigray militia-led fighting in Amhara and Afar regions continued, where lots of people were killed and at least 200 people killed in Kombolcha city. Hermela stated the New York Times and the Wall Street newspaper have also been writing the same narrative as CNN, not recognizing the other aspect of the war that the TPLF militia is doing. She elaborated whether intentionally or not, the narratives really support a rebel group, pretending that the group is a victim and taking the elected government as a culprit. The journalist further recalled that a couple of days ago, there were a group of so-called Federalists and Confederalists that convened press conference attended by presses like Reuters and New York Times in Washington, D.C. and declared that they were going to forcibly dismantle the Ethiopian government. Hermela noted that there is no real indication that this group represents nobody in Ethiopia. It looks like it was a group that was created by TPLF allies or officials. She said, such kinds of issues might indicate that the US government and their media are in some ways helping the TPLF and trying to overthrow the elected government, adding that the narrative is pushing the rebel insurgency as something that is valid.
What is beneficial to the United States and to the Horn of Africa, it seems that the US would want to support a democracy and would want to support a prime minister that has been elected by the majority of the people, because that is the thing that's going to lead to peace.
She said that the US narrative seems to equate the Ethiopian government with the rebels that are fighting the elected government. According to the journalist, these days there is a lot of pressure, including a protest in DC this morning, pushing the US to live up to its democratic values. Over the past couple of days, Ethiopians also staged mass rallies across the country, engaging in pushing back against this false narrative. Regarding the continued pressure of the US on the government of Ethiopia, Hermela said the officials have relationship with some of the TPLF leadership. It is unclear who really is making the decisions in terms of the State Department and the US government. She revealed that there are lots of personal relationships, potentially some with financial gain.
Israelis of Ethiopian origin have strongly condemned the fake reports of some international media outlets, particularly CNN, about the current situation in Ethiopia. Let's get more from the report. Western international media houses such as the BBC and CNN have been disseminating false information about Ethiopia. The CNN, for instance, reported last week that the terrorist TPLF group has surrounded the capital city Addis Ababa to create panic among the inhabitants, including members of the international community residing in the city. 2 Israeli citizens of Ethiopian origin who are here in Ethiopia for humanitarian work have expressed their dismay about the reports as they are completely fake and aim at destabilizing the country. The Israelis, Alamu Aitegeb and Dereje Koke, are currently assessing the situation in the country to provide humanitarian assistance for displaced persons through their non-governmental organization Ethio-Israel Black Lion Global Unit. Speaking to Ethiopian news agency, Alamu Aitegeb said reports of some Western media, including CNN and BBC, regarding the situation in Ethiopia are full of lies and do not exist on the ground. Alamu stated that he was very annoyed by the report of CNN a few days ago that the rebel forces have reached the outskirts of Addis Ababa.
We went to Adama, nothing. Debre Zeit, nothing. These are the towns around the Addis. that we have been told all the towns around the Addis are captured as nothing. And I just want to tell to CNN, BBC, that I'm listening every minute. All Western media are standing on a big lie, and this big lie is transferring to the world, and the world people have to get a real information. It is their right to know.
He further stated that hundreds of thousands have been displaced due to the invasion of the terrorist TPLF group on Amhara and Afar regions. There are about 360,000 displaced persons living in Debark town of North Gondar zone of Amhara region alone. Alamu revealed, adding that many people were killed and farms burned down by the invading TPLF group.
The other thing, the truth is that because of the war, especially the cities which are on border of Tigray, they've been attacked very badly. I never seen that in any war that cows have been killed. In this war, especially on this border between Tigray and the Amhara border, many people are killed and their field is burned by fire, and I never seen such a bad war. This is happening by the I'm sorry, that is what I hear. This is happening, this all very anti-human acting happened by the TPLF and their leaders. This is the truth.
The other Israeli of Ethiopian origin, Dereje Koke, said on his part that the reports of some Western media regarding the situation in Ethiopia are biased. He noted that the international community, including Ethiopians living abroad, should not be misled by the disinformation campaign being carried out by some international media, such as CNN and BBC. During his visit to Ethiopia, Dereje said he has observed that many people have been victimized and displaced because of the invasion of the terrorist group. The non-governmental organization Ethio-Israel Black Lion Global Unit has been mobilizing resources from Israel for humanitarian assistance in Ethiopia. The Western nations are trying to intervene in the internal affairs of Ethiopia in so many ways. However, their intervention is not with the intention of finding solutions that benefit Ethiopia. Rather, it is to ensure their desire of establishing a puppet government which they can play with a joystick. Organized attempts are being made against the sovereignty of the country. Dis and misinformation and posing sanctions are the recent manifestation of their oppression, but Ethiopians stand in unison more than ever to break their yoke of oppression. Regarding the international media reports and the misinformation they have been disseminating, I have Associate Professor Adam Chane from Bahar Dar University, Journalism and Communication Department. Thank you for joining me in the studio and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
To start with, the Western nations are aggravating the crisis in Ethiopia, reporting that TPLF is a responsible freedom fighter group. They are launching the fourth generation war on Ethiopia. We can say that. So, like, from a journalistic professional perspective, what do you say about it?
Yeah, thank you. Seeing from the journalistic perspective, from the professional journalism perspective, specifically and ethical journalism perspective, the Western media such as CNN, BBC, the Washington Post, and other major stream mass media are far from the truth. They are avoiding these journalistic principles and professional and ethical lines and breaking the truth. And they are engaged in a warfare, manipulation of information, and they are creating information disorder with falsification, creating fake news, misinformation and disinformation. So by doing that, they are far from a really journalistic profession, and they are engaged in intensive propaganda. I can say that.
So as a journalistic perspective, we can say they are unethical and they're out of the code of ethics of journalism.
Sure, they are unethical. And seeing from a historical perspective, even we can associate this one with how the Western media portray Africa in general and Ethiopia in particular. And this is a persistence of a century old creating of false image towards Ethiopia. I mean, they are not far from the syndrome of starvation in Africa, the syndrome of displacement, war and conflict, and specifically civil war, coup d'etat. They wanted to see the Ethiopian situation revolving around those problems. And they couldn't break this bondage and creating false narration and seeing this is normal in Africa. And Ethiopia couldn't enable to solve this problem because we're in Africa, specifically we're in East Africa, and they try to show they are helpless and they can't solve their own problem by themselves, so that they try to clear the ground for sanctions and other Western interventions by creating those false narration. And it's a kind of colonial legacy in one way or another. We're seeing from a professional point of view, or seeing from the historical point of view, or in another way, I could say even this is one way of electronic colonization, using huge mass media, and they try to day and night bombarded the Western, specifically the Western community, that Ethiopia is helpless and can't manage the problem, so that Western intervention is very important. Just like that one, I see like that one.
So looking at their organized and continuous reports on Ethiopia, can we say they are working towards disintegrating Ethiopia?
I could say like that one. Disintegration, if not creating a weak Ethiopia. And this is related with what I have said before. Africa is helpless, Africa is dark, Africa is weak, so Ethiopia has no hope in a way without our support. And this is one or another way. I mean, besides creating a good environment for the Western intervention, they try to sell also their news. In the Western media, news is a commodity. They commodify even news so that they can satisfy their commercial interest by engaging in an intensive war reporting here and there in Ethiopia, by creating false information. So by and large, you can say that they are not exercising professional journalism, and they use different tactics of propaganda and misinformation and disinformation or fake news, I can say, are some of the tactics that they use. And the ultimate goal is, I think, besides to the commercial interest, they try to even impose their ideology on African brothers and sisters, and Ethiopia is the main way to do that.
If we say like they are planning or they are working to dismantle or disintegrate Ethiopia, what could be the international world's gain from it? What is this going to be?
The Western world might create a puppet kind of government from the weak Ethiopia, from the disintegrated Ethiopia, but the international community may not get nothing except seeing displacement, starvation, and many other, like what happened in Syria and what happened in Iraq, what happened in Libya and other countries. They create stateless in those countries as human suffering, and the profit is really human suffering, but they might sell arms and weapons, and that may be a profit for Western countries, besides to creating a very weak government that is yes for everything.
As a country, we are in a huge crisis related to the international world and international media reporting. So how are we going to curve out this problem to our benefit?
From the international perspective, I think doing diplomacy is one way. We have to have work towards that direction, work hard. We have to inform the truth. Our truths are inside the country, I can say. So we have to speak for the world community, the global community, that we can manage the problems, that we face the crisis by our own, and we have to work on that. Now, public diplomacy or our embassies outside the country and even other Ethiopians abroad, such as the diaspora community and the scholars in and outside Ethiopia could do that. In another one, what matter our faith is our unity and our strength. So if you work hard in unity, and if you understand, I mean, we can maintain our country, and we may not even dismantle as they wish. So hard work, unity, is vital important than other times in order to solve the crisis that we
From
face.
whom are we going to expect hard work, the stakeholders?
The stakeholders, broadly speaking, the Ethiopian people, like I said, the scholars, the ordinary peoples, the government more than ever, everybody in Ethiopia who might even need the country's stability and the peace.
Thank you very much, Associate Professor Adam Jane. If there is anything you wanted to add on this issue, I can give you a minute. Thank you very much for joining us again.
Thank you.
This is all we got for today. This is Amhara Media Corporation, and you are watching our Wednesday update live from Bahar Dar, Ethiopia. Thank you and have a good time.